Anita was 17 when the idea of leaving home first began to take root. She had grown up in a small town where the air smelled of firewood and dust, where evenings were filled with neighbors' laughter and the cries of market vendors echoing down the streets. Her world was simple, but it was also stifling. Money was always short. School fees had been a struggle for her parents, and though Anita had dreams of becoming a nurse, the thought of paying for more education seemed impossible. Her father had passed away years before, leaving her mother to raise Anita and her two younger brothers alone. Her mother worked long hours as a seamstress, bending over a sewing machine until her back ached, yet the family could barely cover food and rent. Anita helped where she could, braiding hair, selling small snacks at the roadside, but she knew these efforts would never lift them out of poverty. Every night she lay awake thinking, there has to be more to life than this. It was during one of these restless seasons that she met Joyce. Joyce was not much older than Anita, maybe 22, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had seen more of the world. She wore shiny shoes, carried a phone that glittered with stickers, and always seemed to have extra cash in her pocket. To the other girls in the neighborhood, Joyce was proof that escape was possible. One afternoon, as Anita sat outside plaiting her neighbor's daughter's hair, Joyce approached. "Anita, why do you still sit here wasting your youth?" she asked, her voice laced with mock concern. Anita laughed nervously. "What else can I do?" "There are opportunities," Joyce said, lowering her tone. "Real opportunities. Abroad." The word abroad made Anita's heart thump. She had heard of girls going to the city or even overseas and sending money home. Some returned with new clothes and built houses for their parents. Anita's own cousin had left years before and was said to be living well somewhere in Europe. Joyce leaned in closer. "I know people. They can arrange everything: passport, visa, travel. You'll work, maybe in a restaurant or a hotel. You'll earn more in a month than you see here in a year." The thought was intoxicating. Anita tried to push it away, but over the following days it lingered. She pictured herself sending money to her mother, buying school uniforms for her brothers, and finally becoming the responsible daughter who carried her family out of hardship. Her mother, however, was cautious. When Anita finally gathered the courage to mention Joyce's idea, her mother's face grew tense. "Anita, not every door that opens is meant for you to walk through," she said, setting aside her sewing. "Do you know these people? Do you know what kind of work it is?" "They said it's restaurant work," Anita replied. "People say many things. A promise is easy to make, but reality is harder to bear." But Anita's desperation outweighed her mother's warnings. Poverty had a way of drowning out fear. Each time she looked at her brother's thin school books or watched her mother sewing until midnight, she felt a pound of guilt and determination. Maybe this was her chance, the only chance. Joyce returned often, feeding Anita's dreams with vivid stories of girls who had made it big abroad. She mentioned the money, the freedom, the chance to live in a city with bright lights where nobody went hungry. She painted the future so beautifully that Anita began to believe she could almost touch it. By the time Joyce introduced Anita to a man named Patrick, the decision was nearly made. Patrick claimed to be a travel agent. He wore pressed shirts and carried himself with authority, always smiling, always reassuring. He explained the process. Anita would need to sign some papers, pose for passport photos, and trust him to handle the rest. The cost, he said, would be covered up front. She would simply repay them once she was working abroad. It sounded almost too good to be true, but Anita's hope drowned her doubts. Patrick spoke of destinations that glittered with opportunity, cities where young women like her found jobs and earned enough to change their families' lives. Her mother remained unconvinced. The night Anita packed her small bag, her mother clutched her hands tightly. "My child, remember this: the world beyond our home is not always kind. Be careful whom you trust." Anita hugged her mother, swallowing her own tears. "Don't worry, Mama. I'll send money soon. Things will be better. At dawn, she left. The bus ride to the capital was long, winding through fields and crowded towns. Anita pressed her forehead against the window, torn between excitement and fear. She thought of her mother's face, her brothers waving goodbye, and the dream she had carried for so long. At the airport, Patrick handled the documents. He told her when to speak, when to stay silent, and where to sign. Anita felt small and unsure, but she reminded herself, this is the first step to a better life. As the plane took off, Anita watched her homeland shrink below the clouds. She whispered a silent promise to herself, I will succeed. I will make them proud. She did not know that her journey was not leading her toward the bright city of her dreams but into a darkness she could not yet imagine. The air in the new country was colder than Anita. As she stepped off the plane, clutching her small bag, she shivered in the unfamiliar chill. The airport was vast, filled with voices she did not understand and signs she could not read. Patrick walked ahead with brisk confidence, guiding her through the checkpoints. Anita stayed close, afraid of getting lost in the sea of strangers. At first, things seemed normal. Patrick told her they would go to a small apartment where she could rest before starting her job. Anita imagined herself in a neat uniform, serving food in a bustling restaurant, maybe even learning the local language. She pictured sending her first paycheck home, her mother's relief, her brother's smiles. But the apartment was not what she imagined. It was cramped, with peeling paint and a faint smell of smoke. 3 other young women lived there, all from different towns back home. They looked tired, their eyes carrying stories Anita could not yet read. One of them, a girl named Esther, pulled Anita aside that evening. Did they tell you what kind of work you do? Esther asked softly. Yes, Anita replied, eager. A restaurant. Esther gave her a long, sad look but said nothing more. The following morning, Patrick collected Anita's passport and travel papers. I'll keep this safe, he told her. Don't worry, you'll get them back once you finish paying off your travel expenses. Anita hesitated. But, don't I need my passport? Not now, Patrick snapped, his smile fading. You'll only get yourself into trouble carrying it around. Trust me. Something inside Anita twisted, but she pushed the feeling down. She had come too far to start doubting. That night, Patrick and another man drove Anita and 2 of the girls across the city. They arrived at a building with flashing lights, music thumping from within. The sign above the door glowed red. Anita frowned. Is this the restaurant? She asked. Patrick's smile returned, cold this time. It's where you'll work. Do as you're told, and soon you'll be sending money home. Inside, Anita was led to a small room. A woman with sharp eyes and painted lips explained the rules. Anita would serve drinks, entertain customers, and do whatever was asked. Payment, she was told, would go toward the enormous debt she supposedly owed for her travel, her documents, and her new job. Until then, she belonged to them. Anita's chest tightened. No, there must be a mistake. I came here to work in a restaurant. The woman's hand struck her cheek before she could finish. Forget what you were promised. This is your life now. That was the moment Anita understood, she had been deceived. The days that followed blurred together in fear and humiliation. Men came and went, their faces blurring into shadows. Anita cried quietly at night, her body aching, her spirit breaking. She thought of her mother and her brothers, of the letters she had imagined sending, and she wept into her pillow so no one would hear. Escape seemed impossible. The doors were locked, the windows barred. The men who guarded the building carried threats in their voices and, sometimes, in their fists. Anita's passport was gone, her money non-existent. She did not even know the name of the street she was on. The city felt like a maze with no exit. One evening, Esther whispered to her in the dim light of their shared room. You're not the first, Anita. And you won't be the last. They trick us with promises, then they trap us with debts. If you fight, they hurt you. If you run, they find you. Has no one ever escaped? Anita asked, her voice trembling. Some tried, Esther said, her eyes dark. We never saw them again. The weight of Esther's words sank into Anita's chest like stone. She felt the last flicker of her hope sputter and die. Weeks stretched into months. Anita's body grew thinner, her eyes duller. She learned to fake smiles for customers, to obey orders quickly, to swallow her pride. But inside, she carried a silent scream that never left her. Each time she heard music blasting in the club, each time she painted her face for strangers, she thought of home, the smell of her mother's cooking, the sound of her brothers arguing over chores. She wondered if they missed her. She wondered if they believed she had found a better life. Letters never came. Phone calls were forbidden. Anita's world was reduced to 4 walls, harsh lights, and the endless cycle of exploitation. Sometimes, late at night when she managed a few moments of solitude, she closed her eyes and whispered to herself, I should have listened. Mama was right. Not every shining door is meant to be opened. But by then, it was too late. The seasons changed, but Anita barely noticed. The city outside continued its rhythm, cars rushing past, people hurrying to jobs, lights flickering late into the night, but for Anita, time had stopped. Her world was confined to the dim corridors of the club, the cold stares of her handlers, and the endless faces of men who paid to forget her humanity. Her health began to deteriorate. Long nights without rest left her exhausted, and the constant pressure wore her body thin. Sometimes she coughed so hard she thought her chest might split open. Her eyes, once bright with dreams of nursing school, had dulled to a grey sadness. She thought often of home. She pictured her mother sewing late into the night, her brother studying under a weak bulb. She imagined them waiting for news, expecting a call or letter that never came. Anita longed to reach out, to say, I am sorry. I was deceived. Please forgive me. But her captors controlled every moment. The phone calls she once imagined making were nothing more than cruel fantasies. Esther remained by her side, offering what little comfort she could. One night, after a long shift, they sat huddled together on the thin mattress they shared. Do you ever think about home? Anita asked. Every day, Esther whispered. But I don't let myself dream anymore. Dreams make the pain worse. Anita stared at the cracked ceiling. I feel like I've died, but my body doesn't know it yet. In the weeks that followed, Anita grew quieter. She spoke less, moved more slowly, her laughter extinguished completely. Customers complained that she lacked enthusiasm, and the handlers punished her with harsh words, sometimes with more. Each punishment pushed her further into silence. One night, she collapsed in the hallway. Her captors dragged her back to her room, muttering about her being weak and useless. No doctor came. No medicine was offered. She lay there for hours, shivering, her breath shallow. Esther tried to comfort her, but there was little she could do. I just want to go home, Anita whispered. Her voice was so faint it barely reached Esther's ears. But home was a place Anita would never see again. Sometime before dawn, her body gave in. The handlers disposed of her quietly, as though she had been nothing more than a broken object. No message was sent to her family, no explanation given. For the world beyond that building, Anita simply vanished. Back in her village, her mother waited for weeks, then months, then years. She searched for news, asking neighbors, contacting distant relatives, but answers never came. Some said Anita must be doing well and had simply forgotten home. Others whispered that she might have run into trouble. Her mother's heart knew the truth, but without proof, she clung to fragile hope. Her brothers grew older, carrying the weight of silence. Whenever her name was mentioned, the room grew heavy. She became both presence and absence, a ghost who lingered in memory. Over time, Anita's story began to spread in hushed tones. Neighbors told their daughters to be careful of strangers with easy promises. Mothers warned their children that not every opportunity abroad was real. Anita became a cautionary tale, her life reduced to a whisper meant to protect others. She was bright, people said. She wanted more. But she was taken. Anita's tragedy did not bring her back, but it carved a scar into her community's memory. Her story, though unfinished, carried a bitter lesson: poverty makes easy prey, and hope, when exploited, can lead to ruin. The silence left behind by Anita spoke louder than words. It told of dreams that turned into chains, of promises that led to suffering, of a life stolen before it could bloom. And so, Anita's story lived on, not through the laughter she once dreamed of sharing, not through the success she once promised her family, but as a shadowed warning for those who would come after her. Not all doors that shine lead to fortune. Some open only into darkness. If Anita's story has touched you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to this channel so together we can share more stories that open eyes, protect lives, and give a voice to the silenced. Your support helps us spread awareness, and maybe it can save someone else from Anita's fate.